What's going to be the talking points for Teofimo Lopez after this fight? I mean, he comes out there after this fight, just absolutely escapes with a split decision victory. Personally, I gave the fight to Sandor Martin, but okay, it was really close. You want to give it to Teofimo Lopez? Fine. I don't personally agree with it, but I can understand why you would maybe lean that way a little bit. The scorecard of 97-92 is atrocious, but he escapes with this win. He comes out and just, in my opinion, makes some cringeworthy statements. And for saying that about Teofimo Lopez is a lot, because let's be honest with each other, he doesn't necessarily come across the best all the time. He isn't necessarily the most clear and the best communicator in some of his previous interviews. So he comes out here post-fight, accuses Sandor Martin of not being a good dance partner, tells him he's running all the time, tells him that every single time he was willing to engage, that he was cracking him with good, hard, sharp counters. Now look, that's not the same fight that I saw. That's not the way that I saw it. That's not what a lot of people were saying about that fight as we were watching it, man. I'll tell you what I saw was a very good boxing exhibition by Sandor Martin. Now look, Teofimo looked good in spots. I gave him some rounds, no doubt about it. I said going into this one that the man was athletic, that he possesses some skills. He's explosive. We saw him coming in there with that left hook. We saw him landing that right hand. We saw him go up and down with it. He got some good work done. But at the end of the day, what we saw by Sandor Martin was more impressive. We saw a man who was working that check right hook beautifully, put down Teofimo Lopez with it in the second round, caught him reaching a little bit with that right hand, overextending a little bit, thinking he was gonna get some work done, and Sandor Martin had that beautiful little step back, lands a beautiful check right hook that bounces off the top of Teofimo's head, puts him right down. Now, it didn't look like he was hurt too much, but nevertheless, it served two purposes. Number one, scored him extra points. He wins that round 10-8. And number two, it lets Teofimo know, I got something for you. You're not just going to come in here and do whatever you want. You're not going to come in here and raid the pantry or the kitchen at midnight. I'm telling you right now, I've got something for you. There's going to be a little bit of heat in this kitchen. And all night long, that is exactly what we saw. He didn't land it 100% of the time, but 100% of the time, that check right hook was a threat. Man, he landed some beautiful shots with it, missed a few too, but all night long, when Teofimo Lopez was reaching, rarely used the jab, but when he did, he reached with it, Sandor Martin was there. When he reached with that right hook, when that right hand, Sandor Martin was there. He looked really good out there, man. He was executing the sweet signs, hit and don't get hit. And Teofimo Lopez, man, he just does not have the ability to make adjustments. He does not have the ability to go in there, and when the plan is not working, he's not able to figure out ways to get it to work. He accuses Sandor Martin of running all night, yet he's not the one cutting off the ring. He's the one who's following him around. He's the one who's leaping in with shots, relying on his explosiveness, relying on his physical gifts. And when it's not working, he doesn't have an answer. Dude, he was throwing some ferocious shots. He's got beautiful hand speed. Great right hand that he's getting off. But guess what? Sandor Martin was seeing it. He was getting underneath it. He was avoiding a lot of those. He was backing out and taking angles and landing shots of his own. Now, look, I'll be the first to admit Sandor Martin didn't come out there and put on some super high quantity, great work rate offensive display. Not at all. As a matter of fact, by the end of the fight, he landed less punches, if I remember correctly. But nevertheless, this is a sport where the fights are judged on a round-by-round basis. And the judges who are sitting there watching the fight don't have the benefit of looking at punch statistics, what landed, what didn't land, all of these types of things. They're just sitting there, they're watching the fight. Right afterwards, they put it down. And as I was doing the same thing, I would have ended up giving this 95-94 Sandor Martin. That being said, it would have been more if we would have given that second knockdown to Martin. Personally, I thought it was. I guess you can make the argument. They were talking about it as it happened. When they showed the replay, they were talking about it after the fight. You could make the argument that he cuffed him a little bit behind the head, that possibly that turned a little bit into a push. Judgment call by the referee at the time. He said no knockdown. But I thought that when it played back, that it was a legit knockdown. Again, check right hook. Again, Teofimo Lopez reaching in, off balance. Again and again and again, we saw him repeat these same actions over and over. He didn't have any any answer for things. He didn't have any adjustment to be made. He didn't have any way of stopping what Sandor Martin was doing that was working. Imagine if Martin would have had a full training camp. Imagine if he would have got a fair shake by the judges. Imagine if he would have had more power. Let's not forget, this wasn't a guy who was coming in here as some highly ranked fighter, as some top of the food chain type guy. This was a guy who took this fight on short notice, that the majority of people had never heard of, that fought the vast majority of his fights over in Spain, come over here at 140 pounds for his very first fight and beats Mikey Garcia, who's at the end of his career, who's far over his ideal weight class. Looked good when he did it, don't get me wrong. But that's what we're talking about as far as experience. That's what we're talking about as far as resume. Nevertheless, the man showed up tonight. Now, do we come out from this and say that Teofimo Lopez has been exposed? I don't know if that's fair. Or do we come out and do we say the Teofimo Lopez that we saw tonight is actually the Teofimo Lopez that we've always seen? Think about it. Did we see anything different from him tonight? Did we see something that was brand new? Did we see how in the past he used to do something successfully that he's not doing now? I mean, I guess you could make the argument that in the past he was landing his shots and he wasn't landing enough shots tonight. You can make the argument that he was landing them with power in the past. He was not landing with power tonight. That's not really what I'm talking about. Did he used to have a beautiful jab and now he doesn't? Did he used to be a great counterpuncher and now he isn't? Styles make fights. Sandor Martin was coming into this one as a great boxer. I don't know if I want to use a great boxer, but he had very good boxing skills. Very good counterpuncher. The way he's able to avoid, take little half step backs, work little angles here and there. I said coming in that this was going to be a difficult fight for Teofimo Lopez. That's exactly what it was. I said he wasn't going to be able to make adjustments, and he didn't. Look, this is the same guy that we've always seen, except now he's actually fighting bigger guys at 140 pounds. He was able to go in there at 135 and land those power shots and get guys out of there. Now he's not. He's still able to go out here and land shots. It just doesn't affect people the same. He's not able to overwhelm guys with his hand speed, even though he has it. He's just not able to go out there and look the same and do the same things that he did at 135 pounds. And I'll even go one step further. Okay, and that one step further is that even though this is the same guy that we've seen physically, he's performing in a lot the same ways that we've seen him perform before. Mentally, he is not the same man that made that run through the ranks, undefeated, took the belts off of Lomachenko. He's just not. He doesn't have that confidence. Dude, after the fight, he's sitting there in the ring. He's got his hands up on the ropes. He's looking around, and probably one of the most honest moments that you have ever seen. I don't know who he was talking to, but he looks and he says, do I even still got it? Think about that. What's he, 25 years old? He was at the absolute height of the sport. He's got more, after he beat Lomachenko, he's got more belts than he can even physically hold while he's taking pictures. Couldn't have been higher, couldn't have been better. I mean, the lights could not have been brighter. His future could not have been just packed with more opportunity at that point. Now here he is, just a few fights later, just a few years later, still a young man in the game. Still a name that's on the tip of everybody's tongue, and he's looking around with nothing but doubt, saying, do I even still got it? And I get it. I understand exactly why he's saying that, because he used to go into the ring and he used to do things and it used to be easy. He used to have a game plan and he would go out there and execute and it would work. And now it doesn't. Now he's got guys standing in front of him that he thinks he should be able to blow out of the water. And nothing's working for him. He's getting hit when he feels like he shouldn't. He knows that right hook was landing all night and he had no answer for it. He knew that he used to come in, he's doing the same things that he always did, and he's not seeing the same results that he's always seen. Now, here's an interesting question. I was critical of his father as his trainer. I was critical of his father going into this fight. I said that when we're listening to a lot of the advice that he's giving in these previous fights, that he's not giving enough technical advice, that he's in there and he's playing the role of a cheerleader. He's trying to geek him up. Oh, you need to go in there and land the right hand. What are you doing with this guy? You're taking too long. Be more aggressive. Just all of these things, right? Not giving really sound technical advice that's going to help a man who's in the heat of battle. Now, tonight it was a little different. We could hear from Andre Ward. We could hear from Joe Tessitore. We could hear from Tim Bradley what they were having, the conversations that they were having in the fighter meeting. They were saying that going into this fight, these are the things we've worked on. They said that his father, Teofimo Sr., was saying, look, People have been critical of the jab. We're not using it enough. We feel we've got a really good jab, but we've worked on it. We're figuring out ways to implement it into the game plan. We're doing X, we're doing Y, we're doing Z, we're doing all of these things. Then we hear him a few times in between the rounds. Now, whether or not you thought the advice was sound, I guess that's up for debate. But he was giving clear, concise directions. He's saying you need to go with the right hand of the body, and then you need to go upstairs with the double jab. He's saying you need to go to the body more to slow him down. He's saying we didn't get in between all the time. There was commercials they were running and this, that, and the other thing. But he's giving more clear, concise advice. We even heard some of the commentators say that after the fight. Teofimo Lopez was not executing on that advice. He wasn't listening to that advice. Dude, going into this one, we've always heard about the mental issues, the mental health issues that he's dealing with. Going into this fight, he gave what I thought was kind of a crazy interview, and some of the responses that he gave and things that he was saying. It was for Max on Boxing. You had Andre Ward, you had Tim Bradley there. Interesting, man. Interesting. You know, he's openly talked about some of the issues that he's had in the past. You're now dealing with a man who's not listening to advice, questioning himself up and down, turning in subpar performances relative to the level of talent that he has. He's trying to call out some of the top people in the division, and the only thing we can assume is that if he goes into the ring with these guys who are at the absolute top, that it is not going to work out well for him at all. I mean, where does he go from here? One of the things that I mentioned in the past is that he has to bring in another trainer. I think that's the only option that he has left to him at this point. I mean, look, let's be honest with ourselves. He's still young, 25 years old. He's still got the physical talent. He's fast. I mean, he's fast to foot. He's got fast upper body movement, these quick twitch fibers, the really fast hands. He can punch in combination. He's got very good timing. He knows how to counter. He knows how to lead. But he's got some technical flaws that need to be tightened up. I think there's a variety of coaches that would have the ability to help him. Now, look, he would have to go out and find somebody whose personality that's going to fit, right? You got to find somebody that's going to click, because you have to be willing to take direction. I bet you there's a dozen coaches out there that are top-level guys that have worked with top-level guys, world-class fighters, who can look at the tape of Teofimo and they can immediately spot some of the technical flaws he had, right? I've already mentioned a few. He doesn't use the jab, doesn't use enough head movement, and doesn't cut the ring off. There's 3 right there. Super easy. We can already see that. But that doesn't mean that if you go out and get those trainers that they're going to be able to teach you how to do that, and then you're going to execute that in the fight. A big part of it is the relationship. A big part of it is the trust. A big part of it is the way the actual communication is going to happen between the trainer and the fighter. Now, look, am I saying that he should get rid of his father, just can the dude, be done with him? No. Maybe ultimately that is the answer. Maybe they've got this crazy relationship that just for some reason it's not going to work. Even if you bring in an outside voice, you bring in a guy like, I don't know, a Freddie Roach or a Joe Goosen or anybody else that you want to name, a Bo Mack, whoever, right? Whoever you want to put out there. But as long as his father's in the corner, he's not going to be receptive to the advice. Maybe there's going to be tension in there. Maybe it's going to be like one person trying to talk over another and things aren't going to work. You know, in a situation like that, he would have to tell his father that he's moving on from him, go with a completely different trainer, try and switch stuff up, take enough time off, fight 1, 2, 3 tune-up fights on the way back. Look at this as being over the span of your career, right? Don't allow the hype to get to you. Sometimes he walks around and talks as though he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. Man, let all that ride. Let all that go by. Think about what you're going to do that's going to be best for the course of how many fights do you got left? You're 25 years old. You think you're going to fight another 15 fights, 20 fights before it's all said and done? Think about the entirety of your career. Make good decisions for that. Don't think about the fans give me a lot of expectations. I want to get the biggest fights. I want to be known as a guy who was able to bounce back quickly and take these big fights and then mess around and take the chance of taking another loss, and think about the damage that would be done after that. Or maybe he can do all those things and keep his father around. You know, I don't know. It's funny. Mark Kriegel's talking about it after the fight. He said, I've been in this camp for a long time and I've seen things develop. This is not the same relationship that these two had 2-3 years ago. 2-3 years ago, all of the emphasis, all of the power, all the strings being pulled, everything was done by the father. A lot of people were criticizing that, saying the father had too much power. Lo and behold, we've seen all these tensions and all these up and downs in between now and then. He said now the camp's being run and the power has shifted. Now it's the fighter. Now it's Teofimo Lopez that has all the control. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I'd certainly make the argument that the in-ring performance has not been up to par, has not been up to the level of talent that Teofimo possesses. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward, man. I mean, look, he can come out there in that post fight and he can try and point the finger at Sandor Martin and try and blame him all he wants. That does not make up for what he went and did in there, man. And it's just not a performance that is world class. It's not a performance that's going to get him the undisputed status that he talks about wanting to achieve. He's got these technical flaws he needs to work on. I hope he comes up with a plan for it, man. Like I said, he's still young. I don't believe the saying that you have a dog that's too old to teach new tricks. I think that it may be older or it may be more difficult the older you are because you've got these ingrained habits even more. Nevertheless, if you're willing to put your mind to it, if you're under the correct conditions, if you have somebody that you're willing to listen to, there's nothing that can't be accomplished. I fully believe that he could be able to go out there and he could take these flaws and he could fix them, man. He could move past them. He could come out and over the course of a few tune-up fights and then moving on to fighting some of the best in the world, allowing his body to fill out and really truly accept this 140 pounds. That we could see somebody who could go out there and compete, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily will. So let me know what you guys think. Were you impressed with this performance? Do you think that some of the other fighters at 140 pounds are going to be chomping at the bit to get after him now? Teofimo's still a name, right? I said going 7-1 favorite going into this one. I said the odds were crazy, that the play was to go with the over. That's exactly what happened. You got to remember, 7-1 favorite. Those odds don't necessarily reflect the skill of the men involved. A big part of what sets the line is the perception of the public. So what's the perception of the public for Teofimo going to be after this one? What's the perception of other fighters going to be? Is he going to be chomping at the bit? Is he going to take some time off? How's it all going to look? Let me know what you guys think.